I always thought family meant security, love, and support. Growing up in a bustling home in New Haven, Connecticut, I had my mother who worked tirelessly, pouring her soul into every job she took to keep us afloat. I still remember the warmth of her embrace, the smell of her lavender soap mingling with the aroma of her home-cooked meals that filled the air, wrapping around me like a protective blanket. Then there was my uncle, who was someone I looked up to as a child, a pillar of success and charm who always seemed to glide through life effortlessly. Together we formed a small but tight-knit family, living under the silent watch of my grandfather's towering legacy. He had built a vast property portfolio from nothing, a true American success story, and I enjoyed the occasional luxuries that came with that wealth, never aware of the shadows lurking behind our family's financial situation. At 28, I thought I had a pretty good grasp of our world, my place in it secure and unshakable, until everything changed when my grandfather passed away. The heart-wrenching news shattered my perception of strength and stability. My mind raced back to the countless afternoons spent in his study, the smell of aged leather books and pipe tobacco hanging in the air like echoes of wisdom. He was not just my grandfather, he was a guiding light in my life, offering advice wrapped in stories, his laughter resonating like a comfortable melody. But now that melody had turned to silence, and I felt lost in a sudden void. As we gathered for the funeral in the elegant old church that my grandfather had attended every Sunday, my heart felt heavy with grief. Family members mingled, wearing expressions tinged with sorrow, but soon whispers floated in the air like autumn leaves, vagabonds of gossip. "They say he had debts," one relative murmured, eyes darting nervously around the room. "I heard he was in over his head," another admitted, their voice low. And there I stood, caught in the spiral of these hushed conversations, the weight of dread settling in my chest. "Amelia, do you really think this is the time?" my mother snapped softly, her brow furrowed as she caught my eye. I wanted to scream that I didn't choose this moment, it was thrust upon me. I started, but the words vanished, lost in the torrent of my emotions. We were surrounded by flowers, and though they were beautiful, the scent reminded me of decay rather than comfort. It felt wrong. As I remained close to my mother, I could see her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She was crushed, hopelessly weighed down by the inheritance squabble that raged like a storm over our family, while my uncle, the golden child, emerged unscathed, smiling for the cameras like he always did. It was so surreal. His children were oblivious to the strife simmering beneath the surface, lost in their own world of play, while I felt like an outsider in my own family, left to witness the unfairness that churned within me. It cut like a knife to witness my uncle bestow a state-of-the-art gaming console on his son, a gift that glimmered and shone with all the latest technology. The boy's face lit up, a genuine smile illuminating the grim atmosphere. My heart sank deeper as I helped my mother sort through overdue bills that piled on our kitchen counter like a mountain we could neither ascend nor escape. Every bill was a reminder of our grim reality, a stark contrast to my uncle's extravagance. "Mom, are we going to make it?" I whispered one night while we stacked bills in piles, each one more daunting than the last. My mother sighed heavily, a mere shadow of the woman she once was, and her response was barely above a whisper, "We'll manage, we always do." Yet deep down I sensed the weariness clawing at her spirit. Every time I cast a glance at my uncle, I felt a pang of resentment brewing within me. He strutted around our family gatherings like he owned the place, parading his wealth, oblivious to the storm he had created in my mother's heart. It was as if he turned a blind eye to our struggles, flaunting his success without a care while we were cornered by bills and uncertainty. The sight of him laughing with family, echoing through the halls like an unnecessary mockery, made my fists clench at my sides. One evening when the shadows stretched long and heavy over our home, it all came to head. I had returned from work, my shoulders aching and the weight in my chest felt heavier than usual. The kitchen table was cluttered, remnants of yesterday's meals mixed with invoices that loomed like unfinished business. My mother's face was etched with worry, her hands clasping a letter as if it were a fragile piece of glass. I felt a chill creep through me as I approached her. "What is it, Mom?" I asked softly, my voice brimming with concern. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, and I braced myself against the table for support. "It's from the hospital," she said, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Samantha needs an expensive procedure and her voice trailed off and I could see the tears spilling over like a dam breaking. "Mom, I understand. Let's figure something out," I said, my heart racing as I tried to think. But then came the moment that ripped through my heart like a bolt of lightning. My mother's shoulders calmly fell, and she shifted her gaze down to a familiar object on the table, my late grandmother's diamond necklace, a family heirloom worth $25,000. "I need to sell it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The words sliced through me like an icy wind. I felt my breath catch in my throat. That necklace, radiant and storied, was more than just jewelry. It held cherished memories, a love that transcended generations. The thought of it leaving our family felt like a betrayal. "Mom, no," I felt desperation clawing at my insides. "There has to be another way. We could borrow money, something, please, not the necklace." Her gaze faltered and I could see her spirit flickering, dimming beneath the weight of the world pressed upon her weary shoulders. "Amelia, I do not want to. I never wanted any of this." As she held the sparkling necklace in her hand, I found myself yearning to rip it from her grasp and shield it from the cruel grasp of desperation. Why does Uncle get to live like this? Why is he just fine while we struggle? I demanded, frustration bubbling up. I don't know, honey, I wish things were different, but those are the cards we have been dealt, she murmured, her voice growing smaller. But it's not fair, I shouted, feeling the heat of anger creep into my cheeks. He's living lavishly, laughing carefree while we— Stop, she half cried, half hissed, her voice sharp for the first time. Do you think I don't see it? Do you think this hurts me any less? She dropped the necklace back on the table, a glimmer of the diamond catching the fading light, igniting a fire within me that I could no longer contain. I felt a torrent brewing up, a surge of desperate determination. Mom, we have to reclaim what's ours. I cannot just sit here and let him walk all over us. He does not get to take from us without consequences. My vision blurred with tears as I stared at her, wanting more than anything to protect her, to make this right. But the fire ignited a longing for justice within me, a desire to take action against the smugness that cloaked my uncle. He thinks he can just have everything handed to him while we struggle? No, I am not going to let that happen. As I paced the kitchen floor, the walls seemed to close around me, the shadows deepening as the storm raged inside my heart. There had to be a way to pry open the door they had slammed shut on us. It had become furious inside me, a need to reclaim our dignity and the life we were meant to have. I rested my hands on the counter, breathing deeply. Mom, we will figure this out together. This is not the end for us. I will not let it be. As my mother looked at me, I could see the faint glimmer of hope return, even amidst despair. Perhaps our inheritance story did not have to end in defeat. Perhaps I could claw back the happiness that once lit our home. Deep down, a fire ignited within me, and in that moment I understood one resounding truth. I would not succumb to the darkness pressing against us. I would rise no matter what it took. That moment was my breaking point. I could hardly breathe, the air heavy with disappointment and a sense of looming devastation. I looked around the living room of our modest home. The peeling paint and tattered couch seemed to mirror the disarray in my family. I had been the quiet observer for too long, watching as my uncle wreaked havoc on my mother's life, his glimmering facade capable of blinding even the most discerning eyes. The tension felt palpable, and I knew I couldn't remain idle while our family fell apart. I had to take action. So I started by gathering information. The thought of my grandfather's old desk sent a jolt of determination coursing through me. It stood in the corner, hidden beneath a dust-laden sheet, the remnants of his legacy trapped inside. I spent night after night poring over files and notes, flicking on the lamp that cast a soft, warm glow over everything. The wood of the desk felt cool beneath my fingers, grounding me. I uncovered past business dealings and invoices, documents filled with numbers I had learned to decipher. My heart raced with each piece of information, every word revealing a deeper truth. As I combed through the papers, I stumbled upon a balance sheet that made everything click into place. My uncle was over $200,000 in debt, buried in a financial quagmire created by reckless investments he had disguised as successful ventures. It was shocking to think that behind his facade of wealth and achievement lay a crumbling empire built on lies. I felt a mix of disbelief and anger rush through me, flushing my cheeks. My family had been struggling for years, grappling with the consequences of his lavish lifestyle while he swanned around like some kind of tycoon. The pictures I had seen on display around the house, my uncle laughing on the decks of rented yachts, our family posing in front of exotic destinations, suddenly took on a sinister tone. Those moments once filled with joy now twisted in my mind. Were we the laughingstock of a cruel joke, a family duped by a man who loved only his own reflection in his lavish, gilded existence? I felt a strong sense of power grow within me, a fire igniting where there had once been despair. I was not just a bystander, I was armed with the truth, a weapon that could bring him to his knees if I wielded it correctly. As I departed from the confines of that desk, a plan began to shape itself in my mind. I needed an ally for this fight, someone who could help me carry the weight of what I had uncovered. My thoughts drifted to my mother, who had been bearing the brunt of my uncle's deceit. The memories of her stress-ridden face, her silent tears at the kitchen table, haunted me. I wanted so desperately to restore her peace, to see her smile again, free of the burdens that weighed her down. That evening I found her in the living room, the familiar dim lights casting a soft glow over her delicate face. She sat hunched in her chair, her fingers nervously curling and uncurling around a faded quilt that had once brought her comfort. I hesitated before speaking, unsure of how she would react. Mom, I began, my voice shaky but threaded with determination. I think I found something. Something important. She blinked, her eyes wide, reflecting the dim light like shimmering glass. What do you mean, Amelia? She said, her tone laced with concern, her brow furrowed, and I could see the worry etched in the lines of her face. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It's about Uncle. I found records, documents saying he's over $200,000 in debt. I watched her expression shift, confusion giving way to disbelief. Are you sure? She asked cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. That seems impossible. Yes, I found everything in Grandpa's desk, I insisted, the adrenaline surging within me like a tidal wave. He made all these reckless investments and pretended he was successful. It's all a lie, Mom. The words tumbled out like a release, and I could see her absorbing the information, processing the implications. She blinked rapidly, her expression a mixture of shock and hope. What if we expose him? I suggested, my heart racing. What if we hold him accountable for what he has done to our family? I could see my mother's mind racing, the flickers of hope battling against years of fear and uncertainty. Do you think we could? She replied, her voice trembling, but I could also hear the flicker of hope igniting in her words. Yes, we have to make this right, I urged, feeling a resolute fire growing inside me. He has manipulated us for too long. He needs to understand that there are consequences for his actions. The resolve surged through me, filling the silent spaces in our living room with a new energy. Slowly, a flicker of determination began to kindle in her eyes. But it will be risky, she said, her voice trembling slightly. What if he retaliates? Mom, I replied, the conviction in my words echoing back at me. We have the truth on our side, and we can't keep allowing him to walk all over us to steal our peace of mind. If we can gather enough evidence, we can do something about this. We will confront him together. She sighed, the weight of the situation heavy upon her shoulders. I just want this to end. It has been years of heartache. I need to think about whether I am strong enough for this. We can seek out a lawyer friend, I suggested, eager to keep the momentum going. Someone who can guide us on how to file a claim for fraud against him. We need to show him that we will not remain silent. As my mother considered my words, I felt my heart race in anticipation. You're right, she finally said, her voice steady. If we present a united front, if we can get enough proof, then he will have no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. A rush of adrenaline flooded through me. I could almost taste the intoxicating blend of anticipation and fear swirling within my chest, urging me forward. I bit my lip, the plan forming in my mind clearer than ever. We would gather our evidence, document everything, and prepare ourselves for a confrontation that would rattle the pillars of his deceitful empire. As we began to map out our course of action, I felt a stirring sense of power and purpose. The darkness that had once threatened to engulf me was being replaced with a fierce light. Together, we would navigate this treacherous path, unearthing the truth that had set my family adrift. I knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but this time I was ready. The stakes were high. We were standing on the edge of a knife with our risks and possible consequences stretching out before us. But it was time to bring the truth to light, to expose the hidden horrors woven into the fabric of our lives. With my mother by my side, I was ready to confront the monster that threatened to destroy us all in the name of his fabricated success. The day we filed our claim was more monumental than I could have ever imagined. It was a day when everything changed, not just for me, but for my family. I remember entering the lawyer's office with my heart pounding like a drum in my chest, my hands trembling slightly as they clutched the paperwork tightly. The crisp sheets felt like a weighty burden, but it was a burden I was finally ready to bear. Beside me stood my mother, her presence radiating strength that had replaced the despair I had grown accustomed to seeing in her eyes. It was as though she had shed her old skin, one filled with helplessness, grief, and frustration, and emerged fiercely determined. The stakes couldn't have been higher. We both understood that the odds were against us, especially with my uncle's connections poised to sway opinions in the blink of an eye. Our family's reputation hung by a fragile thread, but as we stepped into that office, a quiet resolve enveloped me. I could not shake the feeling that we were finally taking back control, that we were stepping out of the shadows of silence into a new light of truth. Are you ready for this? My mother whispered, a glimmer of uncertainty fleeting across her face. Yet her eyes burned with a fierceness I had seldom seen before. I am, I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. We have to do this, Mom, for Grandpa. The words tasted bittersweet on my tongue, but they were also liberating. People often underestimate the power of finally speaking out, of confronting the truth head-on, and this was our moment. We spent days poring over what felt like mountains of evidence. Financial records sprawled out before us, each document revealing the lavish spending habits of my uncle, juxtaposed starkly against our family's struggles. While I shuffled through old bank statements and invoices, I couldn't help but think about how my uncle had drained our family, siphoning resources, and deceiving us all under the guise of being our protector. The more we uncovered, the more anger bubbled up inside me, and it was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The truth began leaking out into the world, painting an undeniable portrait that would shock everyone at gatherings. Secrets that were once hidden were coming to light, and each revelation felt like another layer peeling back to reveal the rottenness beneath my uncle's polished facade. The family dinner that changed everything came a few weeks later. The air was thick with tension as we gathered around the table, laughter sprinkled with the familiar chatter of relatives reconnecting. My pulse quickened as my mother and I exchanged a significant look. This was it. My uncle arrived late as always, his usual bravado on full display. He sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding the room, cloaked in an air of superiority. I took a deep breath, suppressing the growing urge to flee. Suddenly, my mother stood. Can I have everyone's attention, please? Her voice rang clear and unmoving, silencing the mingled sounds of clinking forks and soft laughter. Though her body shook slightly, she pushed past the nerves. I watched her pull a thick envelope from her purse, my heart racing. This was the moment we had prepared for, though it felt surreal to be taking this leap in front of family that had once been so solid, so united. What is this? My uncle asked, eyeing her suspiciously, his amusement slowly fading. It is time for honesty, she declared as she slid the envelope across the table towards him. There was a gasp from my cousin, shocked uncertainty hung in the air. I stole glances at my aunts and uncles, their expressions shifting from confusion to apprehension. The moment he opened the envelope, his face drained of color, and for a beat I reveled in the sight of his faltering poise. It was as if the very foundation of his world had begun to shake, exposing his treachery to those he had once manipulated. "You would betray your own family." He spat, anger dripping from every word, his voice rising to a volume I hadn't anticipated. "This is just jealousy." His indignation felt misplaced but powerful nonetheless. I could feel my pulse quicken, but I locked eyes with my mother. I didn't want to show fear, not now. It was clear that beneath his bluster there was a flicker of real fear. He was unmade, the walls he had built, long and tall, were cracking with every accusation rolled out. "This isn't about jealousy," my mother stated firmly, her voice gaining the strength of 1,000 voices rebelling against an oppressor. "This is about the truth, about righting the wrongs you've inflicted upon us." She pointedly recounted how he had siphoned every bit of hope from our family, leaving us with nothing while living in luxury, a king in a castle built on the bones of our own. Family members exchanged uneasy glances, sensing for the first time the depth of what lay beneath the surface. Each accusation, every revelation was like a domino falling backward, the shocks of truth sending ripples through the room. "What about the family reputation?" he barked back, the look in his eyes teetering dangerously close to panic. The question lingered in the air, and for a moment it hung thick like smoke. I noticed some of my relatives shifting uncomfortably in their seats, the tension crackling like static electricity. Those who once considered him untouchable were starting to see the cracks in his armor. "We are not here to damage our reputation," my mother retorted, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. "We are here to mend it by uncovering the truth of what you have done. We have to take it back before it is too late." "Everyone knows you are just bitter," he sneered, but the dismissal lacked conviction. I could hear the trembling in his voice, the way it wavered just a bit more than usual. It was a sound of a man who was cornered, and it made me feel stronger, more empowered. "No, uncle," I finally found my voice cutting through the thick atmosphere that had settled. "You may have thought you could hide behind our family's name, but the truth has a way of coming out. We could no longer let this go on." With each word spoken, the tension swirled around the table like a storm brewing. I could feel a collective shift. There was a comfort in knowing that my voice mattered, that we had at last taken the step toward reclamation. "Just look at us," I continued, the fire fueling my words. "Look around this table. You think they are judging us, but they're judging you. The facade is shattered, and it was built on lies." My heart raced, but each breath carried a mark of liberation. Most couldn't look him in the eye anymore. They had seen his true colors. It was nothing short of cathartic. The uncomfortable laughter, the sideways glances exchanged among my cousins, felt like small victories to me. Each one was a flicker of hope that our lives could be rebuilt on something solid instead of deceit. Silence fell, thick and heavy, suffocating him in the weight of his own actions. He glanced around at the concerned faces of his family members, and in that heartbeat, realization crashed down upon him like the tide washing over the shore, relentless and unstoppable. "I do not need to take this from you," he finally roared, standing abruptly. The chair clattered to the ground, echoing through the stunned silence. "Are you going to run away now?" I countered, matching his raised voice with my own steady tone. "You're good at running from responsibility, but you won't be able to run from the consequences of this discovery." The air remained electric with unsaid words, and as he stumbled backward into a corner with nowhere to escape, I realized the journey had only begun. My mother's determination became the beacon guiding me through the darkness, and as we left the dinner that night, I felt exhilarated. It wasn't just about standing up to my uncle, it was about restoring our family's honor. We began to weave our stories into a tapestry of truth, uncovering the legacy left behind by my grandfather. Through these threads of revelation, I could finally see the light at the end of this long tunnel. Would we regain our rightful piece of the family legacy? As the case continued, I at least felt the winds shifting in our favor. Each dinner, every gathering felt charged with an energy I had never experienced before. There were no more masks we had to wear, only the raw truth of who we were. My mother and I became a united front, stepping forth boldly together, and as I glanced at her, I knew we would not stop until we claimed what was ours. The journey for justice had just begun, and with each goal we set, I felt like my uncle's reign of terror was made of sand, ready to be washed away by the tide. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom creaked open as we stepped inside, the air thick with tension. My heart raced in my chest like a wild animal as I clutched my documents tightly, almost crumpling the pages with my grip. My mother walked beside me, her face a canvas of calm determination, but I could sense the whirlwind of emotions stirring beneath her composed exterior. The courtroom felt both massive and suffocating, the high ceilings echoing our footsteps as we moved toward the rows of stiff benches. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, creating a sterile atmosphere that was unsettling against the emotional weight of the day. As we took our seats, I scanned the room. There on the opposite side sat my uncle, a man who had once been a towering figure in my life, now appeared disheveled and desperate, his tailored suit rumpled and uncharacteristically ill-fitting. I could see the frantic darting of his eyes, the lines of worry etched upon his previously unshakable face, and it struck me how power can so easily dissolve in the face of accountability. He always had an air of confidence, almost arrogance, but in his current state it seemed as if that mask was slipping away layer by layer. "Mom, are you okay?" I whispered, glancing sideways at her. She met my gaze with a small nod, though I could see the glimmer of unshed tears in her eyes, a reflection of the years of hurt we both had endured. I wanted to reach over and grasp her hand to assure her that we were going to be okay, but the tightness in my throat made words difficult. Instead, I just squeezed the edge of my chair and focused on the front of the room where the judge sat, the bastion of fairness and authority. The gavel struck sharply, resounding through the silence like a thunderclap. "Court is now in session," the judge declared, his voice commanding yet calm. I shuddered at the weight of those words, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation wash over me. This was it, the culmination of everything we had fought for, everything that had been stolen from us. Our lawyer, a determined woman with sharp features and a piercing gaze, stood up and approached the judge. "Your Honor, we would like to present our case regarding the financial impropriety and emotional distress caused by the defendant," she began, her tone steady and resolute. The judge nodded, motioning for her to continue. As my mother prepared to provide her testimony, I felt a swell of pride and protectiveness. She had endured so much, and now she was finally getting the chance to speak her truth. I could see the tremor in her hands as they shook slightly with mercy and resolve. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Thank you, Your Honor. I stand here today not just as a victim but as a mother who has fought tirelessly to protect my daughter and ensure that justice prevails." My mother spoke, her voice strong though tinged with emotion. "For years, my brother took advantage of our family, channeling wealth and resources away from those who truly needed it. He portrayed himself as a caretaker, a benefactor, when in reality he was only benefiting himself at the cost of others." I watched as my uncle's face twisted into an expression of irritation. His mouth opened, ready to retort, but then closed again as if he were swallowing back the insidious words brewing within. The judge's eyebrows furrowed, sensing the tension thickening in the room. "Your Honor," my uncle finally interjected, leaning forward, his voice shaky but laced with indignation, "this is all baseless accusation. I've always supported my family." "Supported," my mother interrupted, her voice rising. "You've siphoned money from the very people who needed it the most, all the while feigning generosity and care. You had no care for the sacrifices we made while you lived in luxury." Her words reverberated around the courtroom, infusing the air with a raw intensity that felt electric. I could see her fire, that dormant spirit awakening after years of silence. I sat taller in my seat, feeling my convictions swell alongside hers. This was not just her battle, it was ours. I was standing witness to the unearthing of years of betrayal, and each word felt like a hammer striking a nail into the coffin of his deception. The judge, his eyes flicking between the two parties, looked perplexed yet engaged. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the bench. "Proceed, ma'am," he directed, his voice steadying the atmosphere. After losing my job due to his predatory practices, I had to face the stark reality of supporting a family on what little savings we had left. My mother continued, her voice quivering slightly but her determination shining through. "We faced hunger. We faced debt collectors. We felt abandoned and ashamed, all while he flaunted his wealth as if it were a badge of honor. I was left to pick up the pieces, raising my daughter under circumstances that no parent should have to endure." With those words, I felt an avalanche of memories sweep through me. A single room for the two of us, just the bare essentials, the sacrifices made day in and day out. There had been Christmases where all we could afford were small trinkets exchanged with love, the warmth of each other's presence far outweighing any material gift. I could still hear my mother's laughter, even on the hardest days, and how we would curl up together on cold nights, seeking comfort in each other. "I understand your pain, ma'am," the judge replied gently, "but can you articulate specifically how this has affected your current situation?" Her breath hitched as she clasped the pages of evidence laid on the table before her. "Yes, Your Honor, I have documentation here that outlines our financial struggles, the debt incurred because of his actions. I have emails where he promised to support us during hard times, only to later turn his back and deny everything. It is not just about money, it is about dignity, respect, and the bonds of family that he shattered." My uncle smirked, his bravado surfacing momentarily. "All families have their disagreements. That doesn't warrant this kind of public display. I provided help to you when I could," he shouted, trying to grasp onto the illusion of control, but his words were barely a whisper in the storm of truths unraveling in the room. "Help, you offered crumbs from your table while feasting on the rest. You took our love and trust and turned it into your business plan." My mother shot back, her voice rising even further, her passion igniting like dry tinder. I could feel the heat emanating from her, could see the fire in her eyes as she faced him. It was a sight to behold. My mother was reclaiming her voice, fighting back against the shadows that had tried to eclipse our lives for too long. The lawyer returned to her seat, nodding subtly in approval, and I could sense that the momentum was turning. Each witness we called, each story we showcased, was part of a larger narrative unfolding like a canvas being painted over years of neglect. I wanted to stand up and exclaim how powerful she'd been, but I remained rooted in place, captivated by her resolve. Then came the moment when the judge looked toward us, a decisive gesture poised to end the case as he reviewed the evidence. I could see in his eyes that he was staggered by the depth of betrayal displayed in this courtroom. It was as if he was weighing not just the law, but the emotional toll that had been exacted upon my mother and me. With a deep breath, I felt the air fill my lungs, almost as if I could breathe in hope. The gavel struck again, this time with a finality that echoed through the chamber. After careful consideration of the testimonies and evidence presented, I have reached a verdict, the judge announced, a palpable hush falling over the room. I find the defendant guilty of unjust enrichment and infliction of emotional distress upon his family. A rush of adrenaline surged through me, heart racing as I began to comprehend the implications of the words that were filling the air. He shall pay restitution as well as support for both of you moving forward, the judge declared, the authority in his voice suffusing the room with an air of undeniable justice. Tears streamed down my mother's cheeks, a mix of relief, joy, and disbelief washing over her. I turned to her, and for a fleeting moment our eyes met, a silent exchange of hope and victory sparking between us. She had endured so much pain, and now in this moment we were reclaiming our lives piece by piece, justice intertwined with every syllable. As we left the courtroom, I turned to observe my uncle, once the figure of intimidation, now a crumbled man grappling for his remaining dignity. It was a sight I would never forget, the man who had once bilked us of our love and trust reduced to nothing more than a hollow shell. The sense of triumph surged in me again, stronger than before, filling every corner of my being. We had done what we set out to do. The weight of the world felt lifted from my shoulders, a newfound freedom igniting my spirit as we walked together into an uncertain future. When we finally returned home, I sensed the shift in our roles. No longer was I just the passive daughter standing by while my mother fought. I was a warrior now, a fierce protector who had stood shoulder to shoulder with her in the face of adversity. Our lower income didn't matter anymore. We were building anew from the ashes of betrayal, fortifying our bonds with every decision we made. As we sat together that night, nursing cups of tea and reflecting on the day's events, I allowed myself to smile, knowing that we held the power to redefine our narrative. We would rebuild, stronger than before, and nothing would ever take away our newfound sense of justice and freedom. Life began anew. The air in the room felt lighter, buzzing with excitement and hope as we gathered for the first family reunion since everything had changed. The restoration of my mother's strength and dignity was palpable, and each person that entered the house contributed to a feeling of warmth, a soothing balm over wounds that had once burned fiercely. I found myself waiting near the entryway, peering through the sheer curtains, watching as my relatives approached, their figures growing clearer with every passing moment. I could hardly believe we had made it here after everything, and I felt my heart swell with pride. "Look at you," a voice rang out, cutting through my thoughts. My cousin, who had always been closer to my uncle than to any of us, approached with an infectious smile. "I can hardly recognize you. Your mom looks amazing." I glanced back at my mother, and there she stood, wearing a stunning dress, the fabric flowing gracefully around her as if it were alive. But what drew my gaze most irresistibly was the diamond necklace hanging delicately around her neck, catching the sunlight and throwing shimmering spots of light across the room. It was the same heirloom that had once been a dragon of burden, buried under layers of resentment and guilt, transformed now into a symbol of love and resilience. "Thank you," I heard her reply, her voice radiant, each syllable soaked in self-assurance. "I finally feel like myself again, and it's all thanks to what we've done as a family. No more playing favorites, right?" The light-hearted banter mixed easily with the nostalgic tunes of jazz playing softly in the background. I marveled at how family gatherings had shifted from awkward tension to these spirited celebrations of resilience and unity. Gone were the days of strained conversations and side glances. No longer would my uncle dictate the dynamics of our gatherings. The victory felt intoxicating, flooding me with memories of all the hard work we had put into the fight for what was right. "Amelia," my aunt appeared, her arms open wide, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Your mother has been a light. You both are such an inspiration to us all." "Thanks, Auntie," I grinned, stepping back and meeting her eyes. "I just feel lucky we could stand up for her together." "Together is the key," she nodded, her gaze piercing with understanding. "I always said family comes first, even before wealth, and you two exemplify that belief." I couldn't help but agree, knowing that the fight for justice had revealed a brave new definition of family, one that went beyond the confines of the lavish dinners and golden invitations we had once felt pressure to uphold. Looking around, I absorbed every little detail, the sweet scent of my mother's famous apple pie wafting in from the kitchen, the sound of laughter ringing in the air that I had almost forgotten, the soothing hum of connectivity in every conversation happening all around me. I leaned against the hallway wall, absorbing every moment as if it were a precious keepsake, cementing the experience in my memory. As the room filled with heartfelt conversations and laughter, I spotted my mother talking animatedly with my uncle, the very man who had once torn our family apart. I expected tension, but surprisingly I noticed something different. The atmosphere was charged not with hostility but with an unexpected understanding. He was genuinely engaged, inquired about her well-being, and even complimented her on the necklace. I could hardly believe my eyes. I was prepared for duplexing emotions, but instead I witnessed a transformation unfold. Watching them, I feared much like a spectator at a grand performance, moved despite myself. "Mom, are you okay?" I approached her slightly, my voice low. "He hasn't said anything hurtful, has he?" She turned to me and smiled softly, her eyes shimmering. No, dear, we talked. It felt nice, she replied, her voice steady, marked with a new tone of authority. We have mended bridges in a way I never thought was possible. Just then my uncle glanced over at me, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of unease on his face, but it vanished quickly. Amelia, good to see you. He beckoned me over. Can I ask you something? Sure, I replied, masking my apprehension with a smile. Your mother has been talking about her plans for the community center, he began, his voice surprisingly steady. I would love to support something that aids people. I furrowed my brow, unsure if he was truly sincere. That sounds great, I managed hesitantly. What do you have in mind? I would like to contribute funds to the renovation. It's about time we support the community, something we can all connect over, he stated earnestly, resolving all uncertainty between us with a coarser but firm voice. I blinked slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle within me. Well, that would be a great start. There are so many people who would benefit from that. As he walked away, I remained there, frozen in place, wrestling with a wave of emotions. What had happened to him? Had he genuinely changed, or was it a facade? The distance we had maintained for so long had begun to evaporate before my very eyes. Amelia, come join us. My mother beckoned me from the other side of the room, her smile radiating warmth. I swallowed hard and stepped away from my thoughts, allowing the pull of family unity to guide me back. As we gathered around, I found myself sharing more laughter than I had in years. Did you hear what your cousin did in college? Another relative squealed, her eyes sparkling, and I chuckled as the stories drew out the memories of heavier days where ambivalence ruled our lives. I remember another family member telling me of a time when we were all just kids, full of fire and dreams. This moment felt monumental, a serene tableau of our family's rebirth. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the room with golden hues, I caught my mother admiring the necklace in the reflection of a nearby window. You know, dear, she said, her voice laced with nostalgia and resolve, I never imagined I would wear this again. But it feels right, doesn't it? It does, I breathed, taking in the moment. It represents us now more than just a symbol of love, it's proof of everything we've fought for, it holds our story. Exactly, she smiled, her fingers gently tracing the contours of the necklace. It will serve as a reminder for everyone that resilience and loyalty run deeper than petty divisions. Our legacy will be forged through justice, not a battle for more. I watched her, mesmerized by a woman who was slowly but surely reclaiming her place in our family's narrative. You've come so far, I said, emotion welling up within me. And it started with the choice to stand up for what is right. You showed all of us what family can be. Together, Amelia, we created something beautiful, she replied softly, casting her gaze out over the gathering filled with renewed laughter and vibrant conversations. You found your voice and I regained mine. We did this together. Suddenly the door creaked open and 3 tiny figures rushed in, my nieces, full of hair ribbons and little shoes. They squealed with joy, racing toward us. Auntie Amelia, Grandma. They shouted, their laughter a sweet symphony that echoed around the room. They surrounded us, tugging at our hands, their exuberance igniting fresh smiles. Let's take a picture, one of them exclaimed, pulling out a phone, and everyone huddled around, forming a crescent moon shape. Say cheese, the little one chimed, and for the first time in what felt like years, the family smiled wide, every expression free of tension or resentment, the weight of the world seeming to lift in that very moment. Click. I released a breath I did not realize I had been holding. The photograph was only a moment in time, but it encapsulated the essence of who we were and the journey we had undertaken together, a reminder that forged bonds can neither be broken nor forgotten. As the night wore on, enveloped in love, laughter, and resilience, I cherished every second. My mother glowed in the dim light, her necklace reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors, just like our renewed family. In the end, the taste of revenge had morphed into the sweetness of justice, granting us a sense of peace I never thought I would feel. I had found my voice, transformed my world, and ensured that our family's story would always be about love and resilience.